Last week, I drove over 700 miles to chase a rare bird, and it is times like that that having the right gear with you is essential. If you're new here, I'm Doug Hitchcox. My goal is to get to the most people to see the most birds, and in this video, I'm going to go over the gear that I use currently and give you some recommendations about what you should or perhaps shouldn't take with you out birding. I don't know if this technically counts as my everyday carry for birding, it is just too much, but these are at least the essentials that I keep in my trunk so that I have quick access to them when the moment calls for it. First up, the most essential gear for birding is binoculars. I've been using the Swarovski 10x50 ELs for a few years. These are big and heavy, but super bright. And that 50mm objective lets in so much light that I've always found the trade-off of being so heavy worth having the added brightness. I don't love that they are 10s, as most of my birding is done in the woods or in forested areas where having 8s would perform better. I have actually been borrowing these Zeiss Victory HT 8x54s, which solve that magnification problem, but these are just so friggin' huge. Again, insanely bright, and I've used these in complete darkness while out looking for woodcocks, and it's amazing how much can be seen even in twilight. I know a lot of people that use the Victory SFs, but I have never seen the HTs around a birder's neck. Maybe they're just worried about spinal issues, but I will say that the 95% light transmission and high contrast from the Scott HT glass and Abby Koenig's prisms make these the first pair that I've used that's actually made me want to switch. Of course, Swarovski does have their own answer with the new NL52s. The NL line was crazy for delivering the same field of view that their EL8s had, but now in their new NL10s. Then add on top of that the brightness that the 52mm objective gets, and I've got to say that that sounds like my dream pair of binoculars. But I can give you about 3,449 reasons why I haven't made that switch. The other pair of binoculars that I want to mention are the Nikon ProStaff P3s. We got a few pair of these to have as loaners on the birdwalks that I lead, and at a little over $100, they are one of the best value per dollar binoculars around. We are seeing a technological deflation with binoculars right now, as you pay significantly less for a good pair of binoculars. That is to say, at least you get more for your dollar than you did a few decades ago. We can visualize an S-curve on a dollar versus quality graph that has for a long time had these more incremental steps, whereas you pay more, you see appreciable gains in image quality and construction. But now the curve has become a lot steeper as there are some really high quality options available at lower prices. Naturally, the next thing to talk about is a spotting scope. I use a Swarovski ATX95, which is hard to beat. Yeah, you could probably buy a small used car for the price of one of them new, but I think of all the gear that you should invest in as a birder, it's probably a good scope. Binoculars and scopes are the closest thing we get to having superpowers, and if you get to pick, well, you'd probably rather be Hawkeye than Green Arrow. I will mention that Swarovski now sells a 115mm version of that objective that was intended to go with the BTX eyepiece. It is really a funny trade-off that with a binocular scope that you actually need to split the amount of light hitting each pupil, but you actually get more of that light back thanks to a thing called binocular summation. You will perceive between 20 and 40% more information when viewing with two eyes as compared to one, which translates to being brighter and having more contrast. That fun tidbit aside, the point that I really want to make here is that the 95 is right at the limit of what I can travel with. There are always going to be different solutions for traveling with larger gear, but I always prefer to have my optics in my carry-on luggage, and for a bag that's going to fit in an overhead bin, the 95 just barely makes it. While talking about scopes, I'll mention this gimbal head. Absolutely amazing for smooth panning and tilting, but this thing is wicked heavy and has some of the dumbest design flaws. Like, why can this not be pointed up more than 45 degrees? What do you do if you find an owl roosting high in a tree and you want to show it to people? You need to drop one of the legs and then hold the scope from not tipping over the whole time. And if you want to rotate it, maybe for someone shorter to use, this little knob, it can't even be reached. All right, the camera is up next. For some people, this would come in as maybe more important than even binoculars, but photography usually comes secondary in my birding. That said, I have literally had recurring nightmares about not having my camera with me when I found a rare bird. And God forbid I have to write up notes for eBird about an unusual bird I saw rather than just uploading a picture of it. Kidding, kidding, kidding. I have a whole video about how to navigate that situation. You can go find this one. Anyways, I'm using the Canon 7D Mark II with their 300mm f4L prime lens. The 300 is a bit short for what most bird photographers will want, but I love that it also has a surprisingly good macro range, making it great for documenting lepsinodes or the occasional rare tiger beetle while out birding. On top of that, or behind it, the 7D Mark II has an APS-C sensor, which acts as a 1.6 crop to a full frame, which makes the effective focal length closer to about 480 millimeters, but of course at a lower resolution than a comparable full frame would capture. This camera has been out since September of 2014, which feels ancient for a digital camera, and its capabilities are ridiculously far behind the modern mirrorless cameras available now. The successor to the 7D Mark II is the mirrorless R7, which was released in June 2022, but we already have a rumor of an R7 Mark II coming out soon. I should acknowledge that rumor has been rumored pretty much since the R7 was released, but that's the fun part of rumors, right? The new technology in mirrorless cameras is incredible, and anyone looking to buy a new body in 2025 should be prioritizing for this. Most of the large manufacturers now have subject recognition built in with settings specific for animals or birds. And it is wild to see some of the cameras pick out a bird, lock onto its eye, and keep tracking throughout. Switching from the visual to the audio, I have a Sennheiser ME62 microphone in this Telinga 22-inch parabola. Monitoring with the Sony MDR7506 headphones, all connected to a Roland R26 digital recorder. This is the equipment I probably regret most. It should be clear that I love this gear. The microphone and the parabola are amazing for their subject isolation and amplification. Where else are you going to get beautiful signal to noise ratio like this? What I don't like about this setup is that it's just cumbersome. The dish is huge and not easy to carry into the field. It is great to keep in the car and have easy access to, or bring out if I know that a bird is being very vocal, but I only take it with me if I'm intentionally going recording that day. It is not something I ever just have on me the same way that I carry a camera just in case an opportunity comes up. One of the best pieces of advice on picking out audio equipment, which I first heard from the late Tom Johnson, was the best microphone is the one that you are willing to carry with you at all times. This is the same concept as the famous quote that the best camera is the one that you have with you, but that is exactly why I regret buying the Parabola. I rarely carry it with me. I'd probably pick a long shotgun mic if I was going to make the decision now, but I do like that when I'm carrying the Parabola, I know I'm going to get the best recording I can. And the last items I want to talk about are a few of the miscellaneous accessories for birding. Some of these probably deserve their own video, but I'll at least mention some of the highs and lows of these devices here. Speaking of one that needs its own topic, here's the JBL Clip 4. This is a loaded topic, but sometimes you need to be able to output audio while you're out birding, and this speaker is loud, and once paired with the device, it's super easy to power up and use. I'll stop there and say yes, I will be doing a video on the ethics of using playback, so make sure you are subscribed for when that one comes out. As a guide, one of my favorite pieces of equipment is a laser pointer. I always get a kick out of the argument that this makes guides lazy, and I'll admit the ability to point out a bird to a group is an underappreciated skill. But some people are really bad at listening to directions when a bird isn't just sitting in an easy to describe location. So being able to put a bright green dot a couple feet away from the bird, or even just point out the exact tree that they should be looking in, means that more people are going to see more birds quickly, and as a guide, that's really my goal. The last thing I want to mention are digiscoping adapters, as they pretty much all suck, right? Going with the universal adapters means you have 3 or 4 adjustments that you have to try to get dialed in. Or you can go with a perfect fit route, like with a manufacturer like PhoneScope, where they'll make an adapter based on the exact phone and optics that you're using. I haven't tried one of theirs yet, but based on how frustrating every other adapter I've tried, that might be in my bag come 2026. Alright, that is the gear I'm using right now. Some of it definitely deserves more discussion, so let me know in the comments if there's anything that you'd like to hear more about. And while you're clicking around down there, you can also tap that like button, and you can help me with my goal of getting the most people to see the most birds by subscribing to this channel. Thank you.